So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for joining me today. Would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself and about your background in emerging markets and your relationship to the EMI?
I currently run my own private equity firm in Hong Kong. We look at real estate and technology investment opportunities across the globe. And particularly in Asia, we looked at real estate projects in Singapore, in Malaysia, Saipan, and all sorts of markets. I myself, after I graduated from Cornell Business School, the Johnson School, I ran a tech company in China. So I gained quite a bit of experience in technology and in China in particular. And because of my private equity firm, I get to interact and work on deals mostly in the Asia Pacific region. So that's where my expertise is.
Great, thank you. So probably with a specific look in the Asia Pacific market, how do you think emerging markets have made progress in the last decade? So I was hoping that you might be able to talk about any specific milestones or specific markets that just to highlight sort of important growth points in the last decade in your expertise.
Emerging markets have definitely, especially smaller markets like Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines have definitely benefited from the growth that China demonstrated since the GFC. I think there was a trend in China. There was a push to invest in these Southeast Asian countries because of the Belt and Road Initiative. And I myself have seen just personally better deals along the sea routes of the Belt and Road Initiative instead of the northern routes, which is more commodities based. And I think that because of that push, a lot of money went into these markets. For example, in the real estate market, you see a lot of people buying condos, buying apartments in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, for example, and the whole Kuala Lumpur real estate market was really buoyed by foreign investors. But I think in the past 10 years, because of that growth, a lot of markets were doing quite well. We need to see how this pandemic will pan out for each of these nations, and I think that the nations that are the most vigilant, that are able to contain the virus, will emerge from this lockdown faster and pick up growth again. But I do feel that we've entered a new phase that is drastically different from the past 10 years.
That definitely makes sense. So coming from your perspective as an alum, I wanted to pull the focus back a little bit to the Emerging Markets Institute itself, and wondering what your thoughts would be about what does this new paradigm mean for the EMI specifically in terms of research, education, engagement, sort of as we're moving from the last decade into the next decade of growth for emerging markets?
I have sort of three main ideas around that. One is I think the EMI helps students understand and helps students understand the different idiosyncrasies in different countries and really understand the countries themselves. I think before we can do business in the country, or before we can talk about trade and politics and all that, we really have to understand the local realities and what's going on and the backdrop of those countries. And I think EMI does a great job because of the trips that the students get to go on. And I went on a couple myself. So I think from an education standpoint, really understanding other countries and emerging markets and seeing where the growth is and talking to people, which leads me to the second point, which is the emerging markets itself is the EMI Fellows is a very diverse cohort. And I sense that, at least from my cohort, my class, that we were quite close. We were good friends, and we stayed in touch. So I think that that really helped because when I traveled, and I would often remember, oh, so and so who was also an MBA fellow. He was in Shanghai, and then when I went to Shanghai, I visited them there. So I think the network and the friendships that are important. And I think thirdly is that I do think that the EMI can play a role in shaping the conversation around the China-US relations. The two countries need each other, and we can't just continue the hostilities that we have now. And I think those 3 points, I would personally say, I would suggest that EMI would move forward with.
Great, thank you. So sort of jumping off that point, thinking a little bit about how the EMI can add to and participate in the growth of emerging markets. I guess, how do you think the EMI can help supply the skills that are necessary for today's and tomorrow's MBA students to add to that growth?
Working in emerging markets requires a lot of soft skills, not so much the hard analytical skills. That's important too, but the more students hone their soft skills, such as cross-cultural negotiations, and skills in terms of how do we build trust with each other, I think those skills are very important. I think classes are important, but as I said, nothing substitutes the going there yourself and experiencing it and seeing for yourself what the culture is like, what the people are like, and getting to meet people. One of the things that I think the EMI perhaps could ponder is setting up internships in these great companies in emerging markets. For example, the Tencents of China or Grab in Southeast Asia. I think that those internships would help the students to really experience local culture by having hands-on experience. Yeah.
Great. So my next question is, I'm not sure how connected you've been with Johnson since you've graduated, but I'm curious, as an alum again, if you can speak to how education at Johnson perhaps has changed in the last decade at all, and if and to add on to that, if that's not within your wheelhouse, how do you think it could change to address a more internationally minded education going forward?
Johnson has definitely become more tech focused because of Cornell Tech. Back then, not a lot of people were interested in tech. Everybody was still in finance and consulting. Now the there's a lot more focus on analytics and on tech. But from a EMI standpoint, I see a lot of students are also interested in Asia Tech. I think 1 or 2 fellows are actually now working at tech giants in China. So I think that going forward, we could work with these tech giants to secure jobs, internships, interview opportunities for EMI fellows, and I think that would be great for the students.
Excellent, thank you. So those were all the main questions that I had, but I guess I was wondering if you have any parting words, looking back on the last 10 years of EMI and going forward, that you would like to share?
No, I'm just very grateful for the EMI and for being able to be a part of it. I think the community is great. I felt very comfortable, and I think that the people really made a difference. The community really made a difference. We may not remember what we learned in class, but we definitely will remember the people we've met and the people that have left an impact on us, like Professor Lourdes and many others. And I appreciated that, especially the speaker series that EMI has. I remember the EMI brought in ambassadors and great speakers, private equity guys, CEOs, and I really learned a lot from those speakers. So I think I'm just very grateful for that opportunity. I think that was a a key highlight of my experience at Johnson.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.